Hello again, everyone. My name is Haley Pals. I'm the training coordinator here at Empathia. Thank you for joining us today. We have two presenters with us. We have Bob Vandepoel and we have Chris Meske. And as most of you are probably aware, when we provided you with the invite, you had the opportunity to submit some questions, and they will be answering those questions for us today. There is also going to be a breakout session, and I will take care of that behind the scenes. Everyone will be put into a group, and in order to participate with that breakout session, most importantly, you want to accept the invite, and you will also need to adjust your audio, but I will give you a reminder of that when the time comes. And lastly, the session is being recorded, so unless there's any technical glitches, I will have a link available for anyone who would be needing this. And I'm now going to just pass it over to Bob. So Bob, it's all yours.
Thank you, Haley. Hey, after flying solo on these for a long time, Chris, it's really great to have you aboard, and you will add much to the discussion. We've done, I don't know how many, probably about a dozen of these sessions quarterly, all focused upon different dimensions of critical incident response. And I just had a feeling, rather than manufacture yet another topic, I bet there's a backlog of questions that people haven't felt comfortable asking or haven't had it rise to front of mind. So we gave you a chance to ask for a friend. And your questions will anonymously be responded to. This is not to say that we're the smartest people in the room and you don't have great ideas yourself, which is why we'll also have a breakout so you can discuss our reactions, our responses, and come up with better ideas than we have. And Chris, I've asked you to run quarterback on this, driving the questions, and you would be the official voice of Empathia. Well,
thank you. It's good to be here. As Bob said, we have collated questions. We have not attached names to the questions, so don't worry, we won't call you out on these. But if you did submit a question and maybe we're not answering it in the way it was intended and you want to write something in the chat, you could certainly go ahead and do that. I've broken it down into kind of three categories. One that's kind of client related, so kind of what do you do when you are in the room, or how do you prepare before you're going to do a CIR. The second group is working with leadership on a critical incident. One is housekeeping, some things that are specific to Empathia. We have just under 30 questions and about an hour, which doesn't give us a ton of time, especially since we want to do a breakout. So some of the questions we might answer pretty quickly and move on, and maybe the more in-depth ones we'll spend a little bit of time with. So as Bob mentioned, we're certainly not the smartest people here. There's a lot of experience amongst everyone here. So if you want to add to the answer in the chat, feel free to type in, and other folks can read what your comment is. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. And a great place to start is, what is a good way to begin? And I'm going to throw that over to you, Bob. When you are doing a critical incident response, what is the best way to begin?
Always have a plan. You may get to use it. And as we all know, you get surprised once you arrive. The best way to begin is to consult with the leadership first, and that starts with your call before you even arrive there. And there's some other questions that will address that later, so I'm going to go greater into depth. But I'm going to assume you're talking about a group, and I think the best way to start is introduce yourself, and then outline what the purpose of the group is. And this is not scripted. I'm going to pop it around a little bit, but people need to know that they will not be forced to talk, but that we're really glad they're there, and that we hope that they do, because what they say will likely be helpful to someone else. And so often people arrive in these groups and say, I don't really think I need this. You may be right. You may be right, but you making eye contact, you nodding your head at the right time could be immensely helpful to one of your colleagues. We stress the confidentiality. We talk about how long it sometimes takes. We talk about how there are studies that indicate that when people go through events that are disturbing or traumatic or maximally annoying, that it can be helpful for them to gather with those who have a similar impact or similar experience, and for that group to provide an opportunity to process and reminders about self-care and options that they have. I like to start with fully acknowledging the incident, using the real terms, using the real words. And so I will say, I am so sorry about the death of your colleague, John Smith. And I'm so sorry about its impact upon you. Understanding that there are different impacts, but I acknowledge it. In using the real words, I demonstrated that I'm tough enough to handle it, that we can talk here and use the real words, and hopefully it was delivered compassionately also, and that people get started there. That's a great place to start. Do not go around the circle and coerce everyone to talk about what's the worst part of this for them. That has been found with a small population of people to be harmful, but make it available so that people can share.
Thanks, Bob. I'm going to add on to that with a segue into the next question, which is, what is the most impactful action we can take to help at these events? And a lot of these questions do sort of overlap a bit. And I would say, to build off what Bob said, is how you tee it up in the beginning is real important. And especially if it's a complex situation, such as maybe a workplace accident where there could be blame thrown around, angry folks attending. How you introduce that and tee that up can be really helpful in potentially avoiding some of the comments that could come up from the group. In addition to that, I would say, and Bob touched on this too, is you earn trust with the organization before you even step foot on site, and that's by making that phone call before you go, letting them know what time you're going to be there, finding out if there's anything in addition to what our resource guides may have told you, what the organization might need from you, and arriving on time and ready to go. That might seem like very basic, but it's also very important. And the last thing I would say before I throw it over to Bob to see if he wants to add anything else is flexibility. We never know what we're walking into with a critical incident response. You might be told you're there for individual sessions, but once you arrive, they say, you know what, we were able to pull this group together. We'd like you to meet with the group. So roll with the flow. Bob, I'll send it back over to you.
Okay, no, those are all really good points. I think the first is equip leaders. You multiply your influence if you're able to guide those who will be leading them in the days that follow. This is not all about us. We're going to be there for a few hours. These leaders need to move forward. Trust is in jeopardy. Their leadership trust is in jeopardy. The organization's esprit de corps, return to productivity, success is in jeopardy, and the more that we can equip those leaders to be both competent and compassionate, the better. They want us to come in and stabilize, okay? So after, especially if it's a very, very traumatic event, everybody feels like jello, and they're afraid they're going to fall off the table onto the floor, and we provide a bowl. We provide some structure. And so we can share, these are best practices. This is what we'd recommend. Let's ask good questions so that we can draw circles of impact that make sense and include the right people in a group and the wrong people not, or the right people not in the group. And we stabilize, and then our focus, the reason they bring us in is not to do therapy with their people. They bring us in to demonstrate caring from the organization and help the organization return to function as soon as possible. So if we can help their people return to life and return to work and the organization to move forward, that's what we're being paid to do.
Thanks, Bob. The next one is, how do I balance being empathetic and supportive while still maintaining order and structure in the moment? And then part 2 is, what communication strategies are most effective for preventing misinformation and panic? Do you want to kick that one off, Bob?
I don't think that structure and empathy have to be mutually exclusive. Our brains tend to go there. Our brains tend to polarize between empathy and competence, but if we can empathetically create some order and make some suggestions for how this can happen, we do a lot of good for people. People want information because that helps us wrap our head around this incident and how we move forward. So yes, the information is important, the structure is important. People tend to do better if they have information, they resume normal functioning, normal tasks that are familiar to them, and walk through the rhythm of life in a structured way that's familiar to them. So we can do that empathetically. What was the second part of that question, Chris?
What communication strategies are most effective for preventing misinformation and panic?
Okay. You know, panic is contagious. And when information is inflammatory or incomplete, it only squirts lighter fluid on that panic. The reason they bring you in is because so is calm. And so if you can walk in and be the calmest person in the room, and that's calm without apathy, it's calm and fully engaged, you can impact their mirror neurons and induce some calm. Communication strategies, I think it's helpful to normalize the fact that anytime there's a tragedy, anytime there's a crisis, there will be misinformation. That's as predictable as rain, as the sun coming up in the east. There will be misinformation, and so normalizing that and sharing, modeling by saying, this is what we know at this time, and consulting with leaders to also do that. Consulting with leaders to share only what they know for sure, never guess or conjecture. This is what we know at this time, and this is how we will update you. And normalize the fact that if a fact is this far off accurate, by the time it gets down the hallway, according to scale, it will be off by 1.5 miles. So I think normalization is helpful also.
Yeah, I would agree, and Bob touched on this, but I would also add that the nonverbals can be really helpful here in terms of the tone of voice that you use, the body language that you have can also be helpful in terms of showing empathy to the group. And in terms of the second part, it can be helpful to just come out and remind people that gossip is not helpful, and not to talk about the what ifs and speculate on anything or share information. And for those who may have people coming up to them to gossip, that it's okay to set that boundary and say, you know what, I'd rather not talk about it, or this isn't helpful, you know, whatever that might be, to do their part and stop spreading the gossip.
I like that. You know, a strategy that often is helpful is to begin with, thank you for asking, or thank you for sharing with me, because that's disarming. Thanking them for that is disarming, and then saying, I'm just not ready to talk about it right now, or I don't think it would be helpful for me to talk about it because I don't know for sure. And I'd encourage you to do the same. That shouldn't start a fist fight.
Yep. The next one is, should bad news be presented gently or straightforward?
Yes.
Robin joked about this one.
Yes.
Yes, it should be.
Yes. Both. It can be competent compassion and be straightforward, and again, only know what you share what you know for sure. But trust is in jeopardy, And so acknowledging the reality of what it's okay to share is important. If it's a death by suicide or something like that, honor the wishes of the family. But we can, if we're too gentle, okay, don't judge me here, but if we're too gentle, we can actually make things worse. We have an iatrogenic effect where the doctor makes the patient worse. We can create victims by not sharing, and it would send a message, an implicit message of, this is so awful and we see you as being so frail that we can't tell you the truth. And so I think we can share truth as we're permitted to, but do so gently.
And I would add to that, that depending on what the news is, it might not be appropriate for it to come to us or come from us. So depending on that, going back to the management consultation that Bob talked about, that's a good conversation to have with leadership before the meeting, and why it might be better for it to come from the organization, and coaching them on the how to make that communication as well. So you might be more in the role of consultant on this one than delivering it yourself. The next one is new coping steps and ways that has worked in stumbling areas. I guess we could look at this. Are we talking about us as the provider of services, or are we talking about the clients that we're serving? So, Bob, I don't know which angle you want to take with that one.
I think we can do both at the same time.
Okay.
One, you know, if we worked in construction, we would take really good care of our tools, especially our high impact tools. In critical incident response, we're the tool. And so if we can have strategies for ourselves to calm ourselves through box breathing or cyclic breathing, through bilateral stimulation, through centering, through gratitude, through the things that have been found to help to calm and to lower our own blood pressure, then we will present in a way that will bring some calm to the room. In some contexts, it can be really helpful as you get into self-care in your group or in an individual one-to-one session to teach some of those strategies. And those are things that are evidence-based, best practices for helping to calm someone when they're highly anxious or calm them when they're angry. So any co-regulation that we can do for ourselves sends a message, and sometimes that can be articulated verbally, but it also will be caught if we demonstrate it with our nonverbals.
And I would agree with that, and add that I think it's helpful to know yourself. I have one coworker who prepares. She feels more comfortable if she goes in with plan A, B, C, and D. And I know others that work better where they go in and feel like they can be more authentic. I don't want to say wing it because that sounds a little too loose, but they have a plan but feel like they can do better without kind of a prepared speech. So I would say know yourself and know what do you need to do to go into it prepared so that you don't feel like you're stumbling so much.
I like that.
Oh, thank you. What do we do about people who want to pray? Bob, you want to go ahead and start that one off?
You broke up just at the end of that sentence. Could you restate it, please?
What do you do about people who want to pray? And we're assuming that's maybe in the session.
Yeah. You know, that's an awkward one. Well, transparency, I'm a person of faith and believe that prayer is really helpful. However, I don't think it should ever be imposed upon anyone that's in the group. And so I would not want anyone to feel, after their defenses were stripped by an event, to have them now feel vulnerable and feel as though religion, my faith, is being imposed or coerced upon them. And so if that happens in a group, I think that would be important just to be real transparent with the person who makes that request and say, you know, not everybody views prayer, not everybody views faith or a worldview the same. And so I'm going to encourage you to find peers that do the same, or if your organization has a chaplain, then that could be helpful. But it may not be helpful to your team to do that any more than their faith being coerced upon you would do the same. That's a hard one for me because it's near and dear to my heart, but I don't think it's a good idea in a group.
Yeah, this is one where I think I would need that in my back pocket, what Bob just shared, because I think if that were asked in the moment, I would feel kind of stuck. It's probably more likely to come up in maybe a hospital setting where maybe that might be more commonplace. I know we do serve different hospitals. We also have religious organizations that we serve as well. So let me ask you this, Bob. If, let's say it was in an organization where that was more commonplace, and it seemed like maybe people were open to that, do you think it would it be more appropriate for one of the members to lead that prayer, or what about us as a provider leading the prayer? I know I wouldn't feel comfortable with that, where it sounds like you would feel very comfortable with that.
You know, in other settings, I'd be very comfortable leading the prayer myself, but in that setting, so how do you do that? If you're serving a church, I'd ask the pastor, let's ask the professional, or the pastor or the priest or someone there to do it, because you know that there would be some uniformity. But even then, sometimes it can be difficult, and you can encourage them to do that individually. But I wouldn't want to say, okay, is there anybody who's uncomfortable if somebody leads with prayer? Because that would be an really awful spot for that person, perhaps, right? And again, I believe in prayer, but I don't believe in coerced prayer. Anytime that there's been a national church, that's been a bad thing, right?
Yes.
And and so that's how I would just recommend, hey, we're gonna go with what we know for sure would be shared by all of you, and I don't want to put anybody in an awkward position if they don't share that belief.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and one of the themes that's starting to come out a little bit is that transparency, and that's very being very transparent. So thank you. The next one is we got about 6 questions related to clients, and then we'll break into the groups where everyone can talk amongst themselves. I do see a comment. Someone said, I would likely defer to the organization reference to their culture and let them handle that. Yeah, that I would agree.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question is, what if a client asks a question you can't answer, such as their employer plans to do about a situation that has occurred, such as a suicide attempt? I'll read that again. What if a client asks a question you can't answer, such as what their employer plans to do about a situation that has occurred, such as a suicide attempt? Bob, you want to start?
Yeah, I would refer them back to HR or refer them back to their manager. We are not the official word of the company and shouldn't be and shouldn't try to be. Again, our job is to point them toward their normal leaders and their normal authorities and their normal resources, because we're not coming back again tomorrow. And so I think that's what we do. We could only get in trouble if we presume we know what the company's going to do.
Yeah, yeah, and there's that transparency again. I know one of our colleagues here, if a group has a question and, keeping in mind that these groups are confidential. But if a group has a question and they have asked her to bring that to leadership, with their permission, she will do that. So the group would like to know what your plans are. This is talking to the leader. The group would like to know what the plans are about when so-and-so is coming back to work, or if somebody has passed, when their office space, what's going to happen to their office space. Those questions come up quite often. So she will bring that to the leader on their behalf, and that's actually a nice opportunity to then have that consultation, because maybe they haven't thought about that. So, oh boy, what am I going to do with their workspace? Or we don't have a return to work date yet. How do I communicate those things? So it's a nice opportunity to help the leader with some of that.
I think that's also helpful, you know, as you introduce a group or even a one-to-one, to say, hey, what you say here is confidential. And if there's a predominant theme that emerges from the group, I've asked the question, I've introduced it by saying, now I strongly, strongly recommend that you make that request or you share that theme with your manager or with HR. And sometimes I've even said, with 100% unanimous approval of all of you, I would be glad to share that theme as well. And but I make sure that I have 100%. I'll do that only upon the request, but I will do everything I can to try to have them do it, because when I leave, I want that relationship strengthened and trust rebuilt.
Absolutely. The next one is addressing resistance to the process. And I will just start by saying, I think, Bob, one of the things that I think you do very well, I've heard you talk about it in the different trainings, and I've also seen you do this with rolling with resistance. How do you roll with that? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Does the question have to do with resistance from the leadership, resistance from people in a group?
It doesn't say,
okay.
But if you can, maybe take it from both angles. What if you have participants in a group that are resistant? What if you have a leader who maybe doesn't want to pull their people off the line to be able to attend this group? They want them working.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start with the group. I do a lot of work with law enforcement, and so until you build up some trust with them, after working with them on an ongoing basis, you sit in the first group and they're all sitting like this and rolling their eyes, and they're all packing heat, so that's pretty intimidating. But you know, I'll take the one down and say, hey guys, I understand. I'm licensed for group therapy, but this isn't it. I promise. Nobody has to talk, but I hope you do. You are honoring your team. You are honoring your colleagues, your partner, just by you being here. So if you don't say anything, you still get some points for that. But I hope you do. And hey, there have been studies that have found that this is helpful. And it may not be helpful for you at all, but you may help somebody else. So sometimes just taking that one down step creates a greater sense of safety for them. With leaders, it depends upon, now is not the time to try to beat them up and guilt them into doing the right thing for their people. So I'll try to read. You know, there are people who bring you in because they're genuinely compassionate and care about their employees, and there are those who are more driven by the bottom line and by productivity. And so reading that can be helpful. And so sometimes if I'm talking to I'm a stereotypical rigid CFO who doesn't want to pull people off the line, I'm going to say, hey, I get it. I understand you have commitments to your clients and to productivity and to profit. There are studies that indicate that investing a little bit of time right now will be helpful in terms of reducing employee attrition, lawsuits, workers' compensation, disability, somebody else bringing a gun to work tomorrow. There's a business case for this as well. But I'm not going to make them do it, obviously. You have to go with the flow. Sometimes I'll say things like, okay, this is best practice, but everything is subject to your corporate culture, to what's going on in your team, to what your business objectives and schedules are. This is what I'd recommend, and I want you to know that I can flex to meet what your other objectives are.
Yeah, that's really nice. And speaking from my experience on the consultation side of things, oftentimes like HR are kind of cheerleaders of this, and I'm stereotyping a bit, so there's obviously exceptions to this. So they understand it and get the importance of it, but once that line leader, once you meet that person, they're the ones who are trying to meet productivity standards for their boss or meet a deadline of some sort. So even if you get past that HR person and you're all on the same page, you still might meet some resistance from the person that's overseeing that particular group. So we'll talk more about the leadership piece in the next section.
Yeah, Chris, can I be really skeptical here and demonstrate a lack of trust in humankind sometimes? Sometimes you have to look at what is their performance appraisal value? You know, so if you're talking about HR, a big part of how their success is measured may be by employee retention and reduction of workers' compensation costs and disability. If you're looking at a production person, theirs is probably based upon meeting time deadlines and productivity goals. And so their mindset is going that way. Now, I'm not saying any of these are bad people, but you have to think about what are their primary roles and objectives within that organization, because they're going to measure success if you support their success. And that's important. You deal with risk management, you deal with safety, you deal with legal. They all have different perspectives on what a good response is going to be. And I think it's important to try to learn their language and to support them.
Yes, thank you for that. I think that's a great perspective. The next one is another challenging one, delivering a debriefing in a divided workplace with coalitions. And I would just start out by saying that, again, kind of how you tee things up can be really helpful in terms of setting the tone for the group. Having said that, if they're coalitions, they could certainly show during the group. So, Bob, how have you handled that in the past?
With fear and trembling. With fear and trembling. You know, high stress will make those coalitions more rigid and more defended and sometimes more offensive. Sometimes it's helpful just to acknowledge that. You know, one of therapists, you know that sometimes one of the best ways to prevent a symptom is to predict it, right? And you do that. And so sometimes if you say, you know, you're sitting down with a couple and you say, wow, you guys just talked in a way that more intimacy than you ever had before, I predict you'll have a fight before you even get out of the parking lot. Sometimes you prevent that fight by doing so. And so I think sometimes I'd say, hey, I understand that there's been some tension amongst groups within this workplace, and I'm just here to tell you that it's very, very predictable that the lines will be drawn even more starkly than they were before. I'm going to challenge you to do the opposite. History says you're going to be at each other's throats even more than before. I'm going to challenge you, because of this tragedy, to be supportive and to be helpful. You can address your issues later. Let's not use this tragedy as the means to weaponize our viewpoints. Sometimes that's helpful.
Absolutely. I like that, Bob. And I think also what you're saying here, that even though this is not therapy, you can still pull from your toolbox and your couple sessions and the group therapy that you might do. Think about maybe some of the things that have gone well for you when you've handled a difficult couple session or group session, and see how you might be able to use that in this setting. How can I enhance services provided? I'm going to go through this one kind of quickly because I think we've touched on it a little bit. I would just say with this one, in the consultation that I have done, I've often asked permission to give recommendations to someone who may not be asking for my input. If I feel like I have something to add and they haven't asked for it, I'll just come out and ask them if I can share that with them and see if they're open to that. I don't think I've ever had anybody say no. So that's one thing. Bob, is there one thing you can add to that?
You know, that's one of the advantages to having folks who are local, because they know what the resources are. And so they may know some of the community-based resources that would enhance somebody's experience, or that could be a carry away after this day is over. Obviously, we're going to promote utilization of their EAP and PATHIA, and you know, make those resources available to them so that they have support and information and resources going forward.
Yeah. And I think we'll address this kind of indirectly in the housekeeping section too. What kind of post-meeting follow-up is most helpful for the workplace? I'll start out by saying that it's going to be dependent on the situation. So not every group is going to need a follow-up. But we at Empathia will always follow up post on-site to take what you have shared with us, whether it's through a phone call or through your documentation, and talk that through with the leader that we're working with to see what makes the most sense for that given situation. Yeah, I don't know what you want to add to that, Bob.
No, I think that's it. That you know, it's more than just the on-site time. It's the consultation that equips them and makes the organization stronger the next time that they face a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the last one for this section, and then we're going to go into a breakout session. This one, it says employee political incident effects, but I think it's supposed to be incident effects like maybe property. I guess I'm not 100% sure. Employee.
Chris, when I read that one, I was thinking, and maybe it was just because I've done some of this work, is when you have very politically charged situations that may impact an organization, whether it's war overseas or something domestic. That's kind of how I read that one.
Okay.
Yeah. In my work with them, I guess the only point that I would make would be people will try to get you to side with them versus the evil other, okay? And it's okay to say, if they say, so what do you think? It's absolutely okay for you to say, of course I have an opinion, but I don't need to share it today. This is about what your opinion is and what you're thinking and where your loyalties are. And it wouldn't be helpful if I shared my opinion. And to attempt to be neutral is going to be interpreted as apathy. I don't give a rip about this. And that's not true. But you don't have to pick sides.
There's another example of you rolling with it that I think you do so well. So thank you for that. So I have 12:39. Why don't we take, I know this isn't a lot of time, but we still have a lot more questions. Why don't we take 5 to 6 minutes for the breakout group, and we'll come back at 12:45.
Okay, I think I have to pass the ball to Haley.
All right.
And she is now the boss, as always.
Hello, everyone. So I am going to start off this breakout session. I'm just going to take a quick look. Yep, everyone's been added. There are a total of 5 breakout sessions. In order to be able to participate, you will want to make sure that you, first of all, accept the invite that you get. And then after that, you're going to have to make sure that you set your audio. And that's simply so other people can hear you and so you can engage. Bob, how long do you want the breakout session to be? Oh,
Haley, can you hear me, Haley?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to be doing the breakout session for 5 minutes, and then we're hoping that when we come back, people are going to, someone is willing to kind of raise their hand in the chat and kind of speak on behalf of their group and give us some feedback on what was discussed and if there were any other questions that came up. So I am going to mute here, and then I'm going to break the sessions out. So 1 second. Okay, Chris and Bob.
Yes.
Everyone should slowly be coming back. And then we will give everyone an opportunity to speak.
All right. I'm going to jump right in since we're short on time. Anthony, your group, do you mind going first and just sharing takeaways you had from the questions and answers, or anything you wanted to add that maybe we missed, or if there's something you felt we got wrong?
I am going to unmute Anthony. Hold on a second.
Thank you.
Anthony, are you there?
I'm here. I met a delightful therapist from the East Coast, and we really didn't have much time to bring any other questions other than introducing ourselves, and that's as far as we got.
Okay. I know it's not a lot of time, but there's so many questions here for us to go through. How about Dolores? Did your group have a chance to get into any discussion?
Can you hear me at all? This is Dolores.
Yes, we can hear you.
I was not able to be heard in the session, and by the time we got together, it was about the time we went back to you. Very sorry.
Okay, that's okay. How about Ellen in your group?
Good. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Our group, we were discussing the prayer issue, and somebody mentioned the fact that it was against protocol now to do that. Some of us were talking about that if we had a person of faith that chose to pray and there was an individual critical incident debrief or session, that if we were of the same persuasion, we were able to do that. And we wanted to know what the take of Empathia was on whether or not that was like not allowed with this no DBI stuff, or whether it was a personal decision between the practitioner and the client.
Okay. We don't have like a policy per se, I would say. I did like Bob's answer. I feel like that's, for a group session, that's a safe way to go. If it's one-on-one, then I think that's more between the two that are in the room. I wouldn't say you can't do it. I think for me personally, I would not be the one to lead any prayer. I would, right. If the person wanted to pray, I would be fine with them leading a prayer.
Yeah, especially when it's grief. I ask people what their orientation is and what they believe, and and then I support them in doing that.
Yep.
If it were in a group, that's what I put in the chat. I think it's important to, if it starts being divisive like that, I just say, what we could do is take a moment of silence. And for those of you, you can use that moment to have a memory or a thought or a prayer or however you choose to use that moment of silence.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. I think we're going to go back, just for the sake of time, we're just going to go back into the questions. And I'm trying to bring up my document here. Haley, it might help if you ended the breakout session. Are you able to do that? For some reason, my Excel document isn't opening.
Oh, it should be broken. It should have been ended.
Okay. Hold on, my screen just went black. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, I got it. Okay, we are going to switch over to leadership. We have about 10 minutes, and we have housekeeping questions. So Bob, maybe we can try and keep these, it's so hard because there's a lot to talk about, but we'll try and be brief with these so we can get to everything. So the first one is, I often run into the company not providing the employees the time they need to utilize my services. Even in group meetings, the manager may start conducting company business and leave me and sometimes others. And sometimes others I'm with just sitting there listening to their agenda. Bob, do you want to jump in and start that one?
Yeah, one, if that can be avoided in the meeting with the manager before it starts, great. Two, it's kind of cool that you have a seat at the table and that they trust you enough to be there. Three, do what they give you, and you can consult about it, but it's their company, not ours. And so we are flexible and we go with their flow.
Yeah, yeah, and that teeing up, again, can help avoid some of this. It's not always, but it can help. Right. The next one is how to present to leadership the significance of employee-only group CIR when they want to be included in the employee group. And I think this is a common one where the manager may want to sit in on the group because there could be various reasons. It could be that they feel like they could benefit from it themselves. They might feel like their employee group will want them there. They may want to just listen in and hear what people are saying. So what's the best way to handle that, Bob?
You know, that's a hard one because it depends on the culture of the organization. Sometimes having the CEO in the group demonstrates, I really care. And you are humans to me, not just, production units. Sometimes it shuts up the group, and sometimes it feels like they're being spied on. The hard part is that you can't ask that leader, how do people trust you? Sometimes you ask HR, what would it be like if that person participated? Something that I've often proposed would be, could you be present at the beginning and acknowledge what happened and introduce me, and then exit. And your caring and compassion will be demonstrated, and then people will likely be more comfortable sharing. Sometimes they go with that compromise.
Thank you. We have two versions of kind of the same question, so I'm just going to ask one of them. Over my career, I've done hundreds of CIRs. More times than I care to count, I end up just sitting in solitary confinement. I like that because I've been there. What are some of the ideas about how to help leaders promote and encourage utilization? Any other ideas about increasing utilization? And I'll just start by saying that, again, I think that helps with the setup. One of the options could be, is there an opportunity for you and I to walk around for you to introduce me, let people see me, and let them know where I'm going to be, so that they can come and talk with me if they would like to. So that's one thought. Bob, what other ideas do you have?
Just saying, hey, utilization tends to go up if we do a group. Utilization tends to go up if we round together. We all hate the solitary confinement. I like that term. I've called it doc in a box. It's a long, lonely afternoon sometimes. But if you're participating in a group, even if it's a very short stand-up group in the middle of a factory floor where the owner says, hey, I just want to acknowledge the accident that happened to so-and-so, and I want you to know that we've brought in our EAP. Here's Bob representing them. He's going to be there. He's going to meet with the group that worked with this person most closely, and he'll be available for one-to-ones, and he's going to be here till 3 this afternoon. If the door's open, go on in. If it's shut, it means he's talking to somebody else. Are you there, Chris?
Bob?
Yeah.
You're cutting in with others, but I missed most of it.
Oh, shoot. It was really smart, Chris.
I bet it was.
No, I just say, as you consult with leadership first, Talk about how utilization for one-to-ones will be bigger if you can round with them or if you can do a group. And sometimes it's helpful right in the middle of the factory floor to stand up with the CEO or the leader and they acknowledge what happened and say, we care about you, we brought in EAP, here's Bob, he'll be here until 3.
Thank you. Last one on the leadership section is, what are the first questions a manager/CEO should ask before responding to a workplace incident?
Brilliant question.
Sure.
Brilliant
Pardon?
question. Brilliant question. They should be asking, how do I help my people? How do I help my people? How do I help my organization? And to look at it both individually and collectively. That's what they should be asking. How can you help? And you can share. My job is to consult with you. My job is to stabilize. My job is to normalize. My job is to encourage people to practice good resilience strategies and to avoid destructive things that they do and to triage who needs help. But the leader should be asking, how do I help my people and how do we get back to productivity?
Thank you. Quick question for Haley. If we go over, are we able to go over if we need to?
Yep.
Or do you? Okay.
Nope.
If anyone has to leave at 1, feel free to drop off. I'm going to do the housekeeping questions. So, Bob, if you need to leave, feel free to drop off, and I'm glad to continue and go through these questions for those who can stay.
I've got about 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I will take this time to say thank you. Your information, as always, has been very helpful, and appreciate your time. And I'll also say to others, if they have to drop off, that there will be a feedback form. Feel free to please fill that out, share your thoughts, and if you have additional questions, maybe we'll do another one of these in the future. So thanks everyone for attending. So the first kind of housekeeping question is, what is the process to receive feedback on the services we provide? Contacts and supervisors will express appreciation, but are there comments that may be shared with therapists after completing an event? And I will say yes. Now, we don't necessarily do it on every CIR. You know, if we just get kind of like a thank you, it was helpful, we aren't necessarily going to reach out to every provider after every event and share that. But if we get something meaningful, we will follow up and share.
Chris, are you there? Can you hear me?
Oh, Haley, were you saying something?
Yeah, your audio went out for a second.
Oh, okay. I'll repeat that we don't always follow up with feedback if it's kind of like what's noted here. If it's like a thank you, it was helpful, it was nice, you know, kind of general feedback, we're not necessarily going to reach out to you and share that. But if we get something really meaningful, we'll reach out and pass that on to you. I guess no news is good news in that sense. I'll also say regarding the feedback form, specific to the housekeeping section, if there are things we can do differently to help set up our CIRs or set you up for success, feel free to share those in the feedback form as well. We'd like to see those.
Chris, I need to dip out, and I just want to say it was a pleasure working together, and thank you to all of our participants.
Thank you. All right, the next housekeeping is, if some of the workers are too traumatized to come in, is there a problem with doing either a phone or a Zoom session with them? No, the short answer is no, there's not. I would say that hopefully, and this isn't always the case, hopefully we would know that ahead of time so that we can prepare the kind of how we approach the event in the best way. So it might make sense to hold off until everyone can be there. It might make sense for that person to receive maybe one-on-one support, and that might be something that we do ourselves at Empathia through one of our counselors. We might ask you to do that with somebody who can attend. It really all just kind of depends on the particular case and what their needs are. So I would say let's just talk through that and see what makes the most sense. And I can't see the chat, so I'm not sure if anybody has additional comments for that, but I will keep going. Correct path when issues of concern with management. That's kind of broad, but I would say you can call us and talk about anything related to the CIR, whether it's questions ahead of time that maybe we didn't give you. There's a lot of information that gets passed on, and we might miss a piece here and there. So don't be afraid to call and ask us for information. If there's something you feel like you need to be successful before you go on site, by all means, call and ask us. As well as consulting after, whether it's group or individual sessions. We're glad to talk through any of that with you. So again, with a specific issue of concern, we'd be glad to talk through and come up with a response plan or not. Maybe it makes sense to not do anything with the information, but if there needs to be follow-up, then we'll come up with a plan for that. What types of resources are available to first responders? And I would say to speak with the resource specialists. We used to call them resource guides. They're now called resource specialists. Regarding the particular event that you are responding to, we always have handouts available that we can send that could be given to them. But we also we have a few accounts that have additional benefits for first responders. So that's something you could talk with the resource specialist about to see if there are any additional benefits available to them. Got maybe a handful more here. What trends are you seeing regarding on-site critical incident response services since many work from home? And I don't have any specific data on this, so I'm just going to give you my subjective response. And I would say in the height of COVID, we were doing a lot of virtual responses. And then, you know, as people went back to work, I would say we're getting a lot more requests for in-person rather than virtual. So I do wonder a little bit if those remote workers are getting maybe forgotten or lost a little bit. You know, if an organization has a lot of remote workers, you don't necessarily see the impact that either a death or an accident or whatever the so it's going to take more work on the leader's part to be checking in response, but I do wonder about maybe them not getting as much attention as what they need because they are remote. The next question is how to best document an antagonistic participant who associates you with the unfairness of the company and looks for every reason to complain about your presentation and presence. In terms of the documentation, since that is the question, is as much detailed documentation that you can and want to provide is helpful for us. That information stays with us. We don't share that with the company. I would say if if you had a difficult group, again, that kind of antagonistic, and you think there's going to be a complaint, please call us and let us know. That really gives us, you know, that heads up that when we talk with the organization, we can be prepared ahead of time for what they might say. So that's really helpful for us at Empathia, to know that as soon as possible. And we understand that there are groups that are going to be like that, and especially in the example we talked about earlier where maybe there's an accident and there's a lot of anger, maybe anger towards the organization, and they can see us as an extension of the organization. And no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to maybe help them see that you're a neutral party there to try and help them. So those things do happen. Just please be open with us about it. Let us know, and we can work together to kind of figure out how to address that with the organization. Just lost my spot. Okay. We need a more uniformed way of notifying clinicians when a crisis response develops. So this is a nice opportunity to share what our process is when a crisis response develops. So typically what we will do is we have a newer system that internally we refer to as the BLAST, which is a text that you'll receive with the date of the event, the date that we need somebody on site, the hours that we need them on site, the general location, it might be a city, and then maybe some general information about the event. So we're not going to go into more specific detail about that for confidentiality reasons. If you're not available to, you know, you look at it's for October 1st at 9 a.m., I can't do that. The more detailed information is really on a kind of a need-to-know basis, and we do want to respect our the privacy of our customers and not be sharing all that information when it's not necessary. So once somebody responds and says they're either available or I'm not available at this time, I might be available at another time, that's when we'll share more information about who the organization is, more specific details about what the event was. So once you've agreed to take that, then that's when we will share more information. Again, the feedback form that you'll get, if there's place on there for you to share what that experience is like on the receiving end of that, we'd be glad to hear it. You can also always talk with field operations, because certainly if there's ways we can improve on that, we would certainly like to be able to do that. The next and last question. When you arrive and the client contact informs you that another EAP consultant is also on site, which you have not been informed of upon referral, how to respond so that it doesn't reflect poorly on the EAP and yourself as a provider? This is a really good question, and thank you for asking that. You know, the resource specialists should be giving you that information ahead of time. And I understand that they're passing a lot of information on. And if we have more than one person there, that usually means that it's a, I don't want to say bigger event, but it's probably something a little more significant to the organization that we need to have more than one person on site. So again, don't be afraid to ask us questions at the time when we're sharing a lot of information for you to ask, am I going to be the only one there? You know, if that's not something we're sharing. So again, whatever we can do to help set you up for success, we want to be able to do. So don't be afraid to ask questions. But let's say you didn't think to ask and now here you are. And I would say to bluff if you can, and just act like you know that they are there. Typically, if there's more than one person, you're going to be doing the same thing with just different people that will allow us to provide more services in a short amount of time. To reach more people is the reason that we have more than one person there. There's not going to be like a lead and someone who's going to be taking directions from the lead, unless they're from our corporate office, in which case they would be considered a lead, but that's pretty rare, and I would like to think in those cases, because those are typically quite large events, that you would be aware of that. So, you know, hopefully that isn't happening too much, but again, if it is, going back to Bob's example of kind of rolling with it, that would be appreciated. And again, any of these questions or concerns or feedback, please add to the form or talk with our field operations. They'd be glad to talk with you as well. And thank you for hanging in there. For those of you that were able to stay, I appreciate it. We had great questions. If you have suggestions for future topics, again, those can also go on the feedback form. We'd be glad to look at those. And I'll just close with thank you. Thank you for providing services on behalf of Empathia. These are high-profile services that we provide. They're a great opportunity for the organization to really witness firsthand how the EAP helps them as an organization. And so, again, we appreciate all the work you do. And Haley, I will hand it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day and have yourself a great week. And we will see you in our next quarterly session. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.